Hey, it's Natasha.
And Khalil.
And we are the co-hosts of
WokeNFree.
Thank you for tuning in to our 128th episode of WokeNFree. If you've been tuning in every week for WokeNFree Wednesday, you know that WokeNFree is all about being real and honest with each other and you. We talk about everything and anything important to us, you, the world, and nothing is off the table. This week's super exciting because we're speaking with author Reuben Tihi Hayslett, who really confronts identity, politics, racism, and homophobia in his debut short story collection called Dark Corners. But before we dive deep into having a fantastic conversation with him, it's time for your favorite time of the day, Natasha's monologue.
Yes.
So,
been waiting.
Listen, let's get to my version of Hamlet. First and foremost, thank you for being a part of WokeNFree Nation. Thank you for listening to this episode. We appreciate you. If you are listening to this on the Podbean app, then you get an applause. And you also have the opportunity to join the conversation by putting in your comments for the episode. But you can only do this on the Podbean app. So get that app ASAP. Next, if you are catching this show on another platform, say you're like, listen, Tosh, I love you, but I like my Apple podcast. You're like, I like you on iHeartRadio. I like you on Spotify. I love your YouTube channel. Yay! Thank you for still being a part of the conversation and catching the show on any of those other platforms. Just make sure you're subscribed and followed to us wherever you're catching this. So you can definitely go to WokeNFree.com and see all the different places we're at on the listen page. And you can make sure that you're subscribed and followed throughout on all those other platforms. So thank you, and make sure you guys do that. Now, we are not anyone's dirty little secret, so please feel free to share this out with your friends, with your family, with your coworkers. Guys, WokeNFree, there's no other podcast like this. Get the word out. You are a part of WokeNFree Nation, so spread that word, all right? Now, of course, when it comes to social media, if you are interested in hollering at us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or even YouTube, you can find us at WokeNFree, as well on Pinterest as well. And then, of course, if you have 2 minutes, yes, I said it, 2 minutes, make sure you review the show on whatever platforms you're catching the show on. Why? Because it helps to get the word out. And if you put out a review on any of the platforms you're catching us on, we may even shout you out on the show. So wouldn't it be kind of cool to listen and then hear us talk about you? Yeah, it would be. So really be a part of the nation, the WokeNFree Nation, by reviewing the show. Okay, guys? Now, again, go to WokeNFree.com. You can pick your platform of choice on the listen page so that you can pick where you want to review the show.
All right. Now, before we get into the the meat of the interview, each week on our podcast, we like to ask a question about ourselves, and we're going to pose this question to you. So this week, the question is, would you rather have Stan Lee or Kevin Smith create your own comic book character?
Oh gosh, I feel like 100% Stan Lee. Which is I'm not like a hater on Kevin Smith. I'm not like a hater of Kevin Smith. I like a lot of Kevin Smith stuff. But I feel like and Stan Lee was pretty early in Marvel. A lot of my favorite Marvel storylines were written by people who aren't Stan Lee, but I just feel like more of a emotional connection to Stan Lee, and I feel like he's probably a little bit less of the blind spots that like a straight white man like Kevin Smith probably has. Which is, okay. I mean, yeah, I'm like, this is all being recorded and everything, so I guess I'm just throwing myself under the bus.
That's okay. I'm right there with you. I would answer the same way. Stan Lee all the way.
Yeah. I think I like some of the characters he's created, like the whole X-Men universe and what he was really talking about when he released that. There was like more to it than, I don't know, Kevin Smith stuff. I don't think it goes on the same level that Stan Lee touches like society. That's the thing.
And I got like super into X-Men, but I will say this about Stan Lee, because like I was a X-Men diehard. And so, like, a lot of my favorite storylines were not written by Stan Lee. But in Into the Spider-Verse with Michael Morales, when Stan Lee has the cameo post-death, it took me all the way out. Like, I was like, why am I crying? I didn't think I loved Stan Lee this much.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay. Wow, we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah,
So
oh man,
yeah.
Oh wow,
We gotta check it out.
Oh,
all right. So now
Spider-Verse is so good.
Yeah, we gotta see it. It's on the list. It's a big queue. So eventually. All right. So now we'll jump into the interview. Now, can you tell the WokeNFree audience who you are and how you came to write Dark Corners?
Yeah, my name is Reuben Tihi Hayslett. I'm the author of Dark Corners, which is my debut short story collection. And how that came about was really interesting. So I've been working as like a political operative for the last like 5 to 7 years. And I was working on a bunch of different like down ballot elections in 2016 with the big Trump election. And like a lot of folks on the left, I was like completely devastated. And it kind of just like rocked my whole career world and everything. So what I decided to do was to go back to my like true passion. Ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to be a writer. I always wanted to be a short story writer specifically. So I was like, you know what? It's now or never. The country is going to garbage, basically, which it continues to do.
Yes.
So I was like, this is my shot. This is my chance to, really like say what I feel like is important and needs to get out there. So I wrote about half of Dark Corners was brand new material in the first 2 to 3 days after the election. And then I went back to some old stuff and then updated it. The bulk of the novel was really written in those like devastating couple of days after, November 2016.
I love how you said it like that. It was as if someone died. Or maybe democracy died that day. Who knows?
Yeah, my hope for America died quite a bit that day.
Oh man. Yeah. But listen, like I tell my friends and family, nothing lasts forever, right? Change is inevitable. It's a part of life. So this too shall pass. But
and hopefully
I have a question. I want to know, kind of, after we both, you gave us both the book and we read it, and it really rocked our world. It was definitely unlike anything we've read before, and so we want you to share with the audience, kind of, what do you think people are going to take away when they read Dark Corners?
I hope people take a lot away from Dark Corners. I think that one of the things initially that I was just trying to go after was this idea of like, not necessarily the underbelly. I don't like that term when people talk about the underbelly of America, but like the intersections of American culture and where, counterculture, where people who live on the margins intersect with the mainstream. And like sometimes those places can be really traumatic, especially for folks who live on the margins. But there's value and worth there. And I think that stories told from the perspectives of people who are on the outside, who are not part of the mainstream status quo, have like a lot of worth and value. And I hope, a lot of people just get like a completely different perspective and read Dark Corners and think like, wow, I've never thought about X and Y way before. That's really interesting.
Okay.
All right. Now, why do you think it was also important to include stories that showcase like explicit sexuality?
Oh, well, so I've always been told to write the kinds of stories that I want to read. I love short stories. I'm like a huge sci-fi nerd, and, I'm like just any sort of content, movies and television. But one of the things that frustrates me as like a queer person of color is all of the blatant heterosexuality that's in everything. You like watch a movie, and if in the first 5 minutes a guy meets a girl, like you already know what's going to happen. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so tired of this. So it's been something that's very intentional for me when I write fiction. Not all fiction, because there's a lot of heterosexual characters in Dark Corners, but I wanted to make sure that there was space for queer people to really have some queer sexuality within the book.
Okay.
Okay, absolutely. Yes. Welcome, Free Nation. When you read this book, you will see and read a lot. It was definitely unlike anything I've read. So I really enjoyed that piece of it. Now, what's the meaning behind the title?
Funny story. So I was at this political conference a couple of years ago, and we had like a little caucus huddle for all the queer people of color who work as political organizers and operatives around the country to like meet. And we did our little caucus thing, and the facilitator at the end, he was like, tonight there's going to be a happy hour that's just for us at this bar. Come get your drink tickets. There's going to be live music, free food, dark corners. And the whole room just kind of perked up. We were all like, dark corners? Like, I didn't know that was an amenity. And I was like, wow, there is something about the idea of like anything can happen in a dark corner, right? And the people that you meet in dark corners, they have a story just like you have a story. And like what brings people to those kinds of seedier, sketchier places, like I'm so fascinated by like what is quote unquote seedy or sketchy in America, in our culture. So yeah, I thought that would be like a good like sort of frame for the whole collection, is like this is one of those places where like, you know, you just bump into a lot of weird stuff.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's wow. That gives some insight into the book, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So now, while reading some of the stories, I was wondering, and I think you were wondering too, were any of these stories based on like real life experiences or stories that you heard from people? And how did it feel like revealing these stories if they were based on like real events?
Some of them were actually. A lot of them, I think, you know, they're all fiction, but using other people's experiences as a point of departure. So there's a story about an Asian man with HIV, which was inspired by a friend of mine. We used to live really close to each other, and he used to call me up to come over late at night and help him count his pills. Because he was like, I counted them once and I got 12. Then I counted them the second time, I got 11. And then I counted them 3 more times and I got 12. I'm like losing my mind.
Wow.
So I'd come over at like 11 o'clock at night, help him count his meds, and then just ask him a ton of questions about what his experience was like having HIV, and like, you know, not so much how he contracted it, but like what it's like to live with it. And then I decided, you know, like this has meat to be a really interesting kind of story. So there's a lot of them that are somewhat borrowed from experiences either I've had or people who are really close to me, like my chosen fam, who have had. But then some of them are just whole cloth invented out of nowhere.
Wow.
That's really interesting. Wow. Okay. Now, when it comes to, you know, I love how open you are about your sexuality and, you know, just kind of putting it out there. Right. And I think we are in a point in our society where we're encouraging people to just speak your truth and stand in your truth. So when it comes to maybe younger people who read this or people who are still struggling with their identity, what advice would you give them?
I would say to just, you know, to just go for it, like, which I hope this isn't bad advice, but, you know, sex is in the word homosexual. So, like, if you're struggling with it, if you're interested, if you're curious, like, go try it. It's not the end of the world. Like, you know, the walls won't come crashing down. Like, just get out there and do things and find out what you like. Like, it really takes acting. It's like, you know, it really takes action to figure out what it is that you do and don't like. At least for me, as like a sexually active person, I had to like go out there in the world and be like, do I like this? Do I not like this? You know, before I figured out like where I settled.
Absolutely. Great advice. No, I think that makes sense. Like, just sometimes I think it does just come down to just doing. And I think people are so quick to say no before they say yes to themselves. And especially with your sexual identity, I think you don't really know until you try, which might seem unnerving, but it's also extremely invigorating. So I agree. I think that makes sense.
And we, you know, the United States is really based on this like weird puritanical culture of just generally saying no to sexual things in general. And I think we really need to break that.
Word. Absolutely.
Now, what's next for you? Is there like a part 2 to this book coming out, or?
Eventually in the future, yes. So I'm working on, right now I'm working on a sci-fi collection or like a novel in series that is a little bit more like Dark Corners, but dramatically further into the future, and trying to do interesting things like think of like what does humanity look like in a post-white future society, like, you know, and how does that play with like different ideas of like race and politics and whatnot. But I think that, yeah, like, so I'm working on that book. Hopefully it's finished by the end of the year. But my calling really is short stories, and especially like the super short stories. So I do feel like there will be like a Dark Corners Volume 2, Volume 3, you know, in my life. Like this kind of like flavor of stories is something that I'm like really connected to, and it really like gets me super hyped. So I'm definitely sticking with the short stories, even though it might not be the most profitable thing to be writing.
Gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. And then also, like, on the vein of that, would you even consider taking that kind of type of writing and maybe even extrapolating it to other mediums? So like it could be an interesting like YouTube series or podcast, you know, like things like that, since everybody and their mom has a podcast, and you know, it could be really interesting, even especially if you had different voices narrating the stories. Like that would be really cool.
That would be really cool. I've often like fantasized about it, but I haven't actually tried to do any of the legwork. And like everybody and their mom might have a podcast. I don't have a podcast. To me, it's like it's a lot of work, and I'm really glad that y'all do all of this work. Because not everyone can, to be honest.
Yeah,
it's definitely a lot.
Well, you know where to go if you're looking to hear our voices for this series.
That could be really dope. So there is an audio version of Dark Corners that should be coming out in a month or two, and I didn't narrate them actually. This is like, it's a really like head trip experience, but me and my publisher, we found this like young up and coming singer-songwriter in North Carolina named Elvis Williams Jr., and we've been working with him to narrate the entire book, which is the first time I got to hear someone else read my work.
Yeah.
And I, like, my brain melted for like 3 days.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Hey there. Do you have a book that you want to share with the WokeNFree Nation? Are you a business owner looking to share your product or service with the podcasting world? Well, guess what? You can book an ad with us on our Contact Us page at WokeNFree.com. We're super excited to speak with you about curating a unique ad that will get your message across the WokeNFree platform. So go to the Contact Us page at WokeNFree.com. That is WokenFree.com, because WokeNFree is more than a podcast. It's a way of life and offers an innovative way to promote your platform in the exploding podcasting space.
I also wanted to know, when writing this, it sounds like you have been writing for many, many years, but was there anything particularly surprising or shocking for you when you sat down and was creating, you know, Dark Corners?
A couple of things. I wrote the whole thing, like the, you know, half of it, and then immediately went back to old stories and just updated them. So after like 2 weeks, I was like, I have this thing and I don't know what it means or what it's about or if it all goes together. And I was like sending it out to like different publishers, and Running Wild Press, the publisher who picked up the book, she, the CEO, who is a woman, so it's a woman-run independent publisher out there. Everybody follow Running Wild Press. But she was, what she said is she was so surprised that the through line or the theme of like people discovering something about themselves and like this whole theme of self-acceptance, which was not in my brain at all. And then I went back and looked at them and I'm like, oh my God.
True. Oh, interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, very, very cool. Yeah, we'll definitely make sure to include the publisher's information as well in the show notes, guys. You'll find all of that at WokeNFree.com.
Now, where can people get the book at? And if they want to connect with you, where should they reach you?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. You can find me at Reuben Tihi Hayslett on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram. You can find me at Tihi_Rege at Facebook. If you can figure out how to spell it, you'll find me. And the book, Dark Corners, is available everywhere in the United States and Canada. It's available anywhere you buy books online or in person. I like to tell people to support independent local bookstores because they need it. That is a great place to support your local economy and everything and, live in your values. So at most independent local bookstores, if it's not already on the shelf, you can ask for Dark Corners by Reuben Tihi Hayslett, and it will arrive within a day or two.
Oh, wow. I didn't
Very
know
cool.
that.
Yeah, I didn't
So
know
you can
that.
actually make a request and they'll order the book
Yep.
for you.
Nice.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
Okay, very, very cool. All right. Well, we just thank you so much for joining the podcast. And just last words of wisdom do you have for the audience?
Last words of wisdom. I really appreciate the whole thing of keeping it real and keeping it honest. When I was writing the book, I was remembering all these sage words of wisdom that other writing professors or teachers that I've had have told me. And the most important one that helped me get through writing this was that if you're a writer, the most important relationship in your life is your relationship with the page. That is the one place you can never lie. You can't cheat on the page. You can't cut corners. That relationship is sacred. So that would be my advice if, folks are trying to write or they're oh, I'm not sure if I'm any good. If when you sit down to write, you are just so open and transparent and honest about what it means to be a human in a messy world, then you're probably a good writer.
Very cool. Oh, we love it. Thank you so much. You are awesome. And guys, WokeNFree Nation, get this book immediately. You will not want to put it down. When I started, I was like, oh my, let's go.
Oh, yeah. It's so fast paced and there's so much coming at you.
Yeah. I was, from page one, guys, it was popping. It was, it's in your face. You want to find yourself in a dark corner with this book. Amazing. Love it.
Could I ask y'all real quick? What were some of the standout stories for both of you?
I liked the story that was about, I think it was the one with the sisters and I don't want to give away too much because I want people to get the book, but there's a family, right? And then one of them, I believe, is gay. One is married with a husband. And then the dad gets sick. And so I don't, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm dealing with some family stuff, and that really struck a chord with me. And then also the dynamics of, how families, personally, I feel most families are dysfunctional and just kind of broken entities. And so it was interesting. I felt like it was a nice little kind of entree into someone's home, and you see, wow, they're just as beeped as I am, and it's it was comforting, but also wow, how can families behave better? How can we deal with health issues differently in our families? And then also, a little bit about the self-acceptance bit as well. And yeah, so that one stood out the most to me.
Okay, the one that I like, well, I'm more into sci-fi, so the one that really got me was the one where the character meets himself from the future, and they start to have certain interactions. I would give it away, but I thought that one was really great. I've never seen a Back to the Future sort of thing in that kind of light before. How would this person treat you, and what effect would your future self have on your present self? I thought it was really that was more of a head twister kind of thing. It got me thinking wow, I mean, do we really look down on ourselves like that? That's in yeah, would we really do that? I don't know. It's very like I was trying to question the plausibility of like what would really happen if you met yourself. Like, would you try to help yourself? Try to escape the current future self version of you, or would you just let everything happen that's supposed to happen so you don't change? Like, I just thought, yeah, I like stories like that, so that was my favorite story.
That one was a really fun one to write because, like, when I was 20, me and all of my little queer friends, my chosen family, we would do that thought experiment of, like, you walk into a bar, you see, like, a clone of yourself, or maybe you see the future version or the past version of yourself, like, in this gay bar. And it's like, what do? Do you flirt with yourself? Do you run screaming in the other direction? Like, and I was always kind of the person who was like, I might hook up with myself. So I was like, let me just write that story out.
Oh my.
It really would depend on how much alcohol I had to drink, but I was like, oh yeah.
That's intense.
Get out of bed.
It was. I mean, I think one thing our audience should know is, it's definitely a book that you're gonna read and you're gonna question. You're gonna question parts of your life, question things going on in your life, and I think not everything people are reading really forces people to do that. And I think that that's what makes reading really fun when you're not just going through the pages, but you're thinking about the correlation with your life or people in your life, and you're thinking and you're actually using the most important organ in your body, like your brain. And I think that more now than ever, people need to think. And they need to get really real and honest with themselves and what's going on in their lives. So we thank you for writing such thought-provoking words and such interesting dynamic stories. Because like I said, guys, like that was wow.
Well, yeah, I think it opens the world to what people, like most people probably don't like see the world in this perspective. Like they only see their own personal views, and they see what the general media says is acceptable, but we don't get stories like this. So it's definitely something that'll open up your mind a bit and introduce you possibly to things you haven't heard about or even thought about, And then some things will also touch close to home too, because you have personal relations. Like you'll have experiences that are very similar to some of these stories here. So it's not just like I know the stories you say are fiction, but I think some of these
they felt very real.
Some of these it seemed like they could be real. So
you should totally send a copy to who in the White House.
Your favorite buddy.
Oh, everyone's favorite buddy. Yes.
Oh man. Like, but that would entail establishing any sort of line of communication, and that would be really difficult for me to fathom. Because I hate that dude in the White House with such a passion.
Listen, you know what it is? It's like it's such a hard time in our country, politically speaking, because people aren't hearing each other, and we're not even willing to sit at the table with each other because for work to take place, you have to have a meeting of the mind. You have to have people willing to sit and listen, because we're doing a lot of talking, but we're not doing a lot of listening. And I think that this is reflective of some of the decisions that are being made and why people are so enraged. But it's like, you can talk all day, but if no one listens, then nothing's going to get done.
That is 100% true. That is 100% true. And that was actually the feeling, right after the Trump election of like, I was like, I don't think anyone is like hearing me in my life experiences or the experiences of like the folks that I love, who are queer, who are of color, or who are different religions. And so I was like, let me write these stories, and it's like, hear us, see us, like we're here. Like not everyone lives that cookie cutter life, and we have important things to say. And that was really the main driver for Dark Corners.
We loved it, yeah. And as heterosexuals, it was really nice for us to dive in and read stories that don't reflect us, because it's we're the heteronormative experience. So as you said, like we don't even think about it when we see TV shows and movies that show relationships that reflect us, but there are other people on this planet, and their lives and their sexuality and what's going on with them matters just as much as heterosexuals. So we need to have stories that reflect the audience watching them. And so, yes, I think it was an important read for us in that way as well. Just because
definitely.
you gotta get outside your own corner. Like we gotta see other people's corners, guys.
Yep. Out of our own corners and into some dark corners.
Yeah, baby. I like it. Well, thanks again. And we can't wait for WokeNFree Nation to get a copy of the book and, continue to learn and think, because that's what WokeNFree is all about. Yeah, you gotta see other perspectives.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on the show. This was amazing.
Awesome.
Thank you for coming. Yeah, we had so much fun.
Alrighty. Bye.
All right.
Great. Bye-bye.
Oh my goodness. We had such an amazing conversation with the author of Dark Corners. Like, my mind is blown.
Explosive.
Truly explosive. But, it is that time again. Unfortunately, all good things have to come to an end. And it is the end of our 128th episode of
WokeNFree.
What is this, opera? But like in a really dark, weird way.
That was a dark corner opera.
Listen, guys, if you enjoyed the conversation, you need to share your thoughts in the comments, and you need to get a copy of Dark Corners immediately. It will blow your mind. Like, we're not blowing smoke up anyone's butt. Literally, from page 1, you'll be like, excuse you? It was something else. It was definitely unlike anything else I've ever read. And Khalil?
I've never read anything like it.
Listen, it was a whole new dark corner for us. Yeah,
it expanded the corners. It expanded many corners for me.
Yes, guys.
Yeah.
So get a copy of the book. We'll put all the book information, publisher information on the show notes so that you can find them at WokeNFree.com. And of course, will we leave you hanging for what our next episode will be about? Drum roll, please.
On our next episode, we will be discussing how to deal with a disgraced icon.
Fun.
That's my Natasha. Fun.
Fun. That's how we keep it in 2020, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, guys.
Well, then just make sure you follow us on social media to follow along the conversation. And make sure you tune in next week for WokeNFree Wednesdays to join the conversation at WokeNFree.com.
If you want to be a guest on the show, like the author of Dark Corners, what do? You got to hit us up on our Contact Us page at WokeNFree.com. That is WokeNFree.com. WokeNFree.com. Now, again, social media, feel free to hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Pinterest at WokeNFree. And then if you're like, hey, I have a really cool business, I have a really cool product, I wanna advertise, I wanna be a part of this cool podcasting explosive world, then again, hit us up on our Contact Us page and then submit your sponsorship or, collaboration request there. All right?
If you didn't already subscribe, please do share the episode and make sure you come back to join the conversation every Wednesday for WokeNFree Wednesdays. Remember, WokeNFree is more than a podcast. It is a way of life. Until next time.